Welcome, my friends. Welcome to another edition of the Minute Gospel, brought to you by the Woodford Church of Christ in Versailles, Kentucky. I do hope you'll stick around for the next couple of minutes as we talk about a very important subject in regard to God. You know, it seems to me that if we're ever going to have a relationship with God, if we're ever going to come to know God instead of just knowing something about Him, then what we have to do is stop and appreciate, first of all, the holiness of God. God is holy. And I know a lot of people talk about that, but I just wonder if we ever really get a true sense of what that means. You don't have to read in the Bible very long before you start to get a sense of just how holy God is and just how far He is above all of us human beings. Think about Exodus chapters 19 and 20, where God comes down to Mount Sinai. The mountain is roped off. Anyone who even touched the mountain would be struck dead immediately. Any animal that touched the mountain would be struck dead immediately. And there's God who has descended upon the mountain. And the mountain is shaking. There's smoke. There's lightning. There's fire. There's the voice of God sounding like a trumpet. Even Moses himself, who knew God face to face, said that he was fearful and shaking. And then God spoke. God Himself, the Almighty God, spoke to the people those 10 commandments, scared them to death. They never wanted to hear God's voice again. They only wanted Moses to speak for God. That's how holy God is. Can you picture that in your mind for just a moment? How that God, when He did come, had to be separate from all of us other human beings. When He was giving His law, I don't know if you've ever read the book of Leviticus or not. For some people, that's like going to the dentist and getting a root canal. But it's very revealing, because God goes into all these sacrifices that the people would offer: burnt offerings, sin offerings, peace offerings, guilt offerings, thanksgiving offerings, all kinds of things that He talks about there. And in all of that, He makes it very clear that even the priests who would come into the tabernacle, now the tabernacle is the house of God. God is going to dwell there in the most holy place. But even the priests that would come in there to do service, they had to bring blood. They had to sprinkle blood in front of the veil. They had to sprinkle blood on the altar and on all the utensils and things that were used in the tabernacle that way. Think about that. The tabernacle in our mind is usually pictured as this beautiful, pristine place, but actually it was rather bloody, because that's the only way man could come into the presence of God, with the blood of an innocent victim. And then there was that awful, terrible veil that hung there between where God was sitting upon His throne in the most holy place and the people. You could not approach God like you can now. But that expresses the holiness of God. You could read in the book of Isaiah, and if I remember right, there's some 30 times where God is referred to as the Holy One of Israel. In fact, when you read about Isaiah's call in chapter 6 of that book, where Isaiah sees God and the seraphim, what are those seraphim doing? Those seraphim that stand there in front of God, the seraphim that are closest to God, that know Him the best, they are ascribing to Him, holy, holy, holy. And Isaiah has a proper response. He felt so unworthy of being there and even seeing what he was seeing. That's the holiness of God that we find in the Bible. The holiness of God simply means that God is without flaw, that God always says the right thing, does the right thing, thinks the right thing. We human beings can't say that. We do a lot of times what we want to do, regardless of our ideas of the holiness of God. That's how far God is. He doesn't need me to enhance him in any way. There's nothing I can say or do or think, or anyone else for that matter. There's nothing that anyone can do that would enhance God or make God or give God something that he needs. That's how holy God is. And it's something that I hope that you'll pay attention to as you study for yourself throughout the Bible. That you'll pay attention to those times where God is talked about as being holy. We need to appreciate that. We need to appreciate that we have no business standing in front of God. But in part 2 of this, we'll talk about how we can through Jesus Christ, because he came and showed us the holiness of God and made it possible for us to be able to stand in his presence. And I hope you'll check back and watch for that video as well. But until then, this is Wayde Miller saying, go out there and make it a good day. Try and serve the Lord.